Hello again. We were last talking about what the Old Catholics believe, and then I had gotten into where we differ from Rome and these other communions. So let's start with that. What makes us different? From the Romans, it's pretty easy. We differ clearly in matters of discipline, administration, and procedure. For example, clerical celibacy. We view that as a matter of discipline. We don't require it. And truth be known, the Romans don't either. They wish for it, but the requirement of celibacy can and has been dispensed by the Pope himself. In fact, it was done for a former priest here in my very city in Fayetteville, Arkansas, former pastor of St. Joseph's here. Converted, became a Roman Catholic. He was an Anglican or Episcopalian priest and came to the Catholic faith, and his admission to orders was granted. He had a family and was married. Nonetheless, we differ with them. We permit our priests to marry. The marital status of a priest is, as I said, a matter of discipline, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most Old Catholics. Liturgy is something that is up to the local bishop. However, liturgies vary in the Old Catholic tradition from bishop to bishop. So some might use a Roman liturgy, some might use an Orthodox liturgy, some might use an Anglican or Episcopalian liturgy. But that, again, is a matter of liturgical choice. I think where most Old Catholics draw the line is if a bishop goes off on his own to invent something new that isn't supported by history or tradition. We are a union of churches rather than a monarchy. That is a matter of administration, and some might call it polity. Our bishops are elected almost in any situation rather than appointed by the Pope of Rome. That both touches on administration and procedure. We believe that major decisions should be made in a council of bishops. We don't rely on a patriarch to hand down decisions that are binding. Any decision within our communion must be made within the communion by its bishops in council. Pardon me, my nose is itching. Excuse me. Other differences between us and the Romans. We reject infallibility of the Pope. Although we respect the See of Peter and regard it as primus inter pares, he is the first among equals. He is still just the first among equals. We do not we reject universal jurisdiction of the Pope. He is not the bishop of everywhere. He is the bishop of Rome, with all due respect. Although we revere him, he does not have jurisdiction outside of his see. On things like divorces, mixed marriages, remarriages, these are matters remitted in Old Catholic think as pastoral concerns between pastor and the congregant. Divorces, mixed marriages, and so forth, these people are completely and totally welcome. We would not prevent them from approaching the Holy Table ever. And such, our communion is open to all baptized Christians. In other words, if you come to an Old Catholic church, at least in my jurisdiction, you're welcome at our table, coming as you are, believing as you do, so long as you're baptized. If you're not baptized, we'll do everything we can to encourage you to seek baptism so we can admit you into communion with that small thing. But indeed, it is a great and wonderful thing. It is the first of all sacraments. Matters like contraception, birth control, are matters of personal conscience between congregant and priest. It's up to the job of the magisterium, the bishops of the church, to help form the conscience of the congregants through proper teaching, and to nurture that conscience to maturity. Sexual orientation is a non-issue for most Old Catholics. There are exceptions. In this communion, it is not an issue. In short, we don't care if you're gay. We don't care if you're lesbian. We don't care if you're transgendered. The same moral behavior that we require and teach the same moral behavior regardless of someone's orientation. Period. It's that simple. The fact that morality and sexual orientation are even mixed up together in the same sentence, to me, is frankly an affront, and I apologize for even doing that. Sexual orientation is, simply put, a non-issue. Unlike Rome, we will recognize and bless same-sex unions, and yet we will still represent and respect the sacrament of marriage between a man and a woman. There is no difference in dignity. We make no difference whatsoever. All people who wish to join together in union with one another before God are welcome to consult with us, and we would be thrilled to officiate your weddings and unions. Now, let me move on to differences between us and the Episcopalians. To be honest with you, that is a much more difficult thing, because we have so much in common with our Episcopalian cousins, especially as the Episcopal Church has evolved over the last really 10, 20 years. It's hard sometimes to draw distinctions, but there are a few. But I will say that on matters of discipline and personal choice, matters of conscience, we're very similar. Not across the board, but because there are, in the Episcopal Church, they give great latitude to their bishops and how they approach some of these things. But I can say that most of our congregants would feel right at home in an Episcopal church. In fact, in Europe now, the Anglican Church and the Old Catholic churches are in a communion together. They recognize each other's orders and teaching, and they also respect each other's differences, because there are some. There is not, to my knowledge, an Old Catholic community in the United States that's in communion with the Old Catholic Church of Europe. And there's not an Old Catholic group in the United States that's in communion with the Anglican Worldwide Communion. Nor is there an Old Catholic group in the United States that I'm aware of that's in communion with the Episcopal Church USA. If there is, I would be surprised if I found it. And there are a lot of reasons for that, mainly because our jurisdictions are so small. Doesn't appear, I think, in the eyes of the Episcopalians to be much advantage to them. But we find great support from our Episcopal brothers and sisters, and we're very grateful for them in the faith. As between Episcopalians and Old Catholics, we differ largely in matters of procedure and administration. You'll see in the Episcopal Church the use of area bishops called suffragans. We don't tend to do that in the Old Catholic Church. Rather, bishops in the Old Catholic way of thinking are head of their own churches. It might be a distinction without much of a difference. I think where you'll find the biggest difference is emphasis on devotional practices. For example, in most Old Catholic communities, you'll see much stronger devotions to the Blessed Virgin Mary and the saints than you might in a typical Episcopal parish. That's not true across the board, but I find, and my observation has been over the last 20 years or so, that there is a greater emphasis on the Blessed Virgin Mary and the saints by Old Catholics than there are by our Episcopalian brothers and sisters. Old Catholics tend to cling to the ancient practices of the Church and ancient views of theology, whereas Episcopalians tend to place more emphasis on the Protestant notion of personal revelation, witness, evangelization, and the rule of reason. Not that we reject necessarily all of those notions. We could stand to learn much from our Episcopal brothers and sisters.